Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and LEGO just sent me the entire August wave of LEGO Marvel sets for early review. I can't wait to jump into these because there are some absolutely incredible sets here, from a new version of the Milano to some Age of Ultron themed sets and displays and dioramas. We Marvel fans are absolutely eating good this year. So let's go ahead and jump into my mega review of all of the brand new Marvel August 1st, 2024 sets. So here is the entirety of the August 1st, 2024 LEGO Marvel Wave. Starting off with the largest and my favorite of the wave, we have 76286, the Milano spaceship, retailing for $180 US. Next up is 76295, the Avengers Helicarrier for $80. Then there's a Thor Ragnarok set, 76289 Thor vs. Surtur construction figure for $30. We go all the way back to Avengers 1 with 76290 the Avengers versus the Leviathan. Blasting back to Guardians, we have 76297 Dancing Groot for $45. And for Age of Ultron, we get a 76288 Iron Man and Iron Legion versus Hydra Soldier, as well as 76291 the Avengers Assemble Age of Ultron. Altogether, these all make up the latest Infinity Saga lineup of sets, and I cannot wait to jump in and share all the details of these brand new sets. So this is 76288 Iron Man and Iron Legion versus Hydra Soldier. It comes with 135 pieces, 4 minifigures, and retails for $20 US or 22 euros. 2 of the minifigures are brand new and identical. These are the Iron Legion members. We have not actually seen the Iron Legion in minifigure form since 2015's Age of Ultron Avengers Tower set. So it's really nice to not only get a brand new version of this with a little bit of an updated detail that brings it a bit closer to what you see in the movies, but also in a set as cheap as this. We also receive a new version of the Hydra Trooper. These are the troopers who have been upgraded with Chitauri armor, although 3 other copies of this trooper do appear in the larger Age of Ultron diorama. The same goes for the Iron Man figure included in the set as well, which is a new Age of Ultron version of the Iron Man suit, which does also appear in that larger diorama. This, as a $20 set with a very small side build with a focus on 4 figures, is almost like a Marvel battle pack. And to be honest, I have mixed feelings on this set. I think when we first heard we were getting a battle pack focused around the Iron Legion, expectations were pretty sky high. It was $20, it was an Age of Ultron set. I think a lot of people assumed that it would be 2 members of the Iron Legion versus 2 Ultron drones. And to be honest, I definitely do feel that maybe a lot of the fan reaction to the set has been because of the extremely high expectations that we've put for ourselves in terms of what people wanted to see for a set like this. I also do feel that that would have arguably been a much better set. If you do get the larger diorama, you'll already have a copy of this Iron Man figure. You'll also already have a copy of the Hydra Trooper, and while it is cool to get 2 members of the Iron Legion, this isn't really that useful of a battle pack because, well, it does include an Iron Man figure in it. Yes, I do understand that for marketing purposes, LEGO figured the set would sell better because it does have a very recognizable character in the form of Tony Stark included in the set, but I don't even know if I agree with that. I feel like a lot of kids might have maybe bought multiple copies of the set if it included even 2 Iron Legion troopers and then 2 Hydra soldiers instead of Iron Man. I don't know, I feel like that army building aspect of generic characters is something that LEGO Star Wars does really well, but something we haven't quite seen nailed for LEGO superheroes. That being said, let's take a closer look at the build here. This is a small segment of the Hydra Fortress in the snow that we first see in the opening of the movie. It has a number of rotating guns, 2 stud shooters in the center, and it's a bit awkward because to stand up the Hydra soldier, he's also holding a stud shooter there, so you kind of have 3 stud shooters in the center here, as well as 2 rotating laser turrets on the top. It's a pretty simple build, but one that looks good in terms of the scenery. There's not much else to do on the inside, it really is just a very basic build, and honestly, I feel like there was a big missed opportunity to either make these sections of the wall something that you could buy multiple copies of and actually clip them together, like put 1 clip on the side here, a clip receiver on this side, then you could make like a full-on wall or maybe like a rectangular fortress if you got 4 copies of the set, or include an axle connector back here so you could actually connect it up to the Age of Ultron Assemble diorama, which would be another cool way to tie 2 different sets together. Unfortunately, it is just basically a standalone set. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I do feel like there was a missed opportunity to have a bit of a synchronicity within the wave or even within multiple copies of the set, much like we've seen in other LEGO themes to really tie everything together. Minifigure wise though, I am very happy with the Iron Legion minifigure. I actually think that these are a lot better than the initial version that we got, because if you see in the movie, the way the faceplate was done was a completely different shape than the standard Iron Man faceplate. It was a lot thinner, narrower, and it had less detail on it. It didn't really have a mouth, so to speak, basically just this upper faceplate, and I feel like the usage of this kind of generic Iron Man style of helmet is a really good one to use for printing on the front of the helmet here. And I'm really glad they chose to do this rather than the flip-up helmet, which I think would have been a little bit too big for what they're trying to accomplish here, and the detail just wouldn't have quite been right. In terms of Iron Man though, it is really cool to get a fully detailed version of that Age of Ultron suit with the new helmet, which still is taking a little bit of getting used to, I will say. Very much something that I do feel like the older helmet is one of the most iconic LEGO pieces ever. And while the argument could be made this one is better, I still do miss the older one, but I think it is, overall, a good improvement, and the detail on the minifigs is fantastic. And the Hydra Soldier with Chitauri armor is also a pretty solid figure. You have a really nicely detailed head with a strap on the back, you have the metallic gold of the Chitauri with the purple as well as the Hydra logo there, and the stud shooter is great as well. No printing on the legs, and while I think that would have been nice to have a little bit of leg printing, it is okay for what it is as a massable soldier, and overall, as a minifigure pack, this is actually a really solid build. For $20, the value is sort of there, and I think it really does depend on your enjoyment of the figures. The build itself is really no more than a $10 build, but if you count the figures as being worth $10 altogether, which I think all things considered, I do count all 4 of the figures worth around $10 together, I feel like this is a pretty decent set. It could have been way better if they went in a different direction, but alas, this is what we got, and that's about all I have to say about this one. Here is 76289 Thor vs. Surtur construction figure. It retails for $30 US and comes with 245 pieces and 3 minifigures. Thor from Thor Ragnarok, as well as 2 of these lava fire demons, which appeared very briefly in the opening scene to that movie. Of course, the main focus is on Surtur himself, and this is probably one of the most interesting construction figure sets they've done, because not only is it focused on buildable action figure play with a fully posable version of Surtur, but it actually had a surprising amount of different possibilities for display. Obviously, as you can see, you have an action scene here with Thor leaping behind Surtur trying to slam him with the hammer, but there's a surprisingly high number of things you can do. A chain is included, so you can actually take the crown off Surtur and hoist it onto Thor's back. An extra tube piece is included here, so you can actually connect this curved posable piece to the hammer and make it seem like the hammer is flying through the air, and you even have a large transparent dish here for Thor to make him be able to stand up while he's hurling the hammer in a circular motion. It's really impressive just how much display ability they brought into this play set, but let's first dive into the figure itself, and then we'll talk about the minifigures in a little bit. Surtur is a really nicely done character, and I'm gonna be honest, I did have my reservations at first when I saw the head. I obviously saw that it was the Deviant Crow figure from Eternals. They just used the same exact head mold, and I was a little bit dubious of how well that would work for the character, and while I still do maintain that it would have been better to have a brand new mold for him, if this is the best they could do and they didn't have the budget for a new mold, it actually works surprisingly well. The brick-built crown was a little bit goofy to me at first and felt like it didn't necessarily match up, especially at certain angles with the shaping of the head of the figure, but then I realized that it is actually brick-built, so you can literally take it off and put it on Thor's back just like in the movie, which made me like it a lot better because it actually does now have an added play feature. Articulation-wise, you can move the legs back and forth, no knees, which is kind of to be expected in a smaller scale figure like this, but you can rotate the ankles of the feet, you can turn the waist back and forth like so, and you can even move the elbows and hands individually, which is really nice. He does have this black shoulder armor, which I think is also really good to really kind of round out the figure. It is using these specialized new prints for the quarter tile circular elements here to have the flaming chest, and I also really like the usage of the LEGO Ninjago Source Dragon of Motion recolored blade here from Ninjago crystallized in dark red and transparent orange to act as the sword for Surtur, which is a really nice weapon for him to have. On the back, it is fairly simple, but I do like how it utilizes the Technic tubes here, which kind of look like the back of the spine, and you even have the option to rotate the posable stand back and forth so you can have Thor swinging all around him. Altogether, for a smaller scale character like this, I actually quite like how much effort went into making him fully posable, fully playable, and something that you can actually do a lot of different things with. In terms of the minifigures, we're going to start off by taking a look at Thor, and I'm just going to emphasize some of the different things you can do with it. Once more, this is the Thor from Thor Ragnarok, a version of the character we have not gotten since 2017, and the big change is that this time, he does have a rubberized cape. I have mixed feelings about this, because I actually really do like this piece. Unlike some other folks, I actually think it looks really cool. It makes it feel different and more distinct than other Thor variations, and I actually do feel like it does look a lot like how it does look in the movies. It feels like the way that the capes flowed in the movies, but I also am a sucker for the original capes that we used to get for LEGO. I really love those OG capes, and I definitely hope that this will not replace those original capes, and I hope that this is just a variation they will include, and other figures with capes will continue to get fully fabric elements, because I think that for other LEGO minifigures, especially for original themes, having a fabric cape gives it a lot more gravitas and presence. So for this instance, I think it works really well, but I hope it doesn't mean that we're going to not see a ton more of the standard fabric capes. Otherwise, the figure is done up in gunmetal gray, which is really nice. I love the amount of detail factored in. Of course, you have the standard Thor head with the lightning on the other side of the eyes here, and here's what he looks like hurtling the hammer in the circular motion with that iconic scene from Thor Ragnarok where the hammer is just bashing through all the skeletons, which is really cool because you do get a couple of them in the set to, of course, have the hammer be thrown through them. It is a little bit difficult, admittedly, to pose Thor with the hammer on this circular motion here, which is why they did attempt to give you a circular figure stand to make it happen. However, unless you have the hammer pointed fully upwards, that circular stand isn't gonna do anything. Like, if you wanted to have him like he's throwing his hammer sideways like this, there is no shot he's going to be standing up because of that, so it really only is useful when you actually have him standing up like this, and then again, you probably could just have him stand on his legs, but hey, I appreciate the effort. Otherwise, the only other minifigures included are 2 copies of the Surtur Fire Demons here. They really are just utilizing the black skeleton piece with a new print for the head, which I think is pretty nice. They didn't even need to include this, and honestly, I kind of forgot these guys existed until they included them in the set, but it's nice how it's not just Thor versus Surtur, but there are some villainous other forces as well to take out with the hammer. Overall, for the price, I think this is a pretty decent set. I'm always a sucker for the large action figure characters, and while this one isn't one of the best, I definitely feel like it does capture the look and feel of Surtur quite well, and I do just love how you can really just take the chains, and you kind of just have to figure it out, but you have him hold the chains and wrap it around the back for Surtur's crown here. It will take a little bit of adjusting and posability, but once you have it on him, I think it is really cool how you do have that option to really just go crazy with how you want to display these minifigures and have Thor be carrying the crown of Surtur behind him. It's a fun set, and I never thought we would get this moment in Thor Ragnarok kind of revisited again, and so I'm very grateful the Infinity Saga has given us something that we can actually use to recreate the events of that movie. Pricing-wise, I think it's pretty good, and nothing much else I have to say about this set, otherwise pretty positive. Here's set number 76290, The Avengers versus the Leviathan. It retails for $50 US or 50 euros and comes with 347 pieces, putting it at around a 15-cent price per part ratio. However, we have a Hulk. Yes, this does include a full Big Fig version of a Hulk, as well as 5 minifigure characters in total, Loki and Chitauri representing the villain side, and Cap, Black Widow, and Hulk representing the Avengers. Altogether, I was honestly pretty surprised at how many characters they included in the set, and let's start off by taking a look at them right now. The highlight of the set is getting the Hulk in a cheaper set. This is almost the same as the version that came in the Avengers Tower, but with a slightly different facial expression. It is still really nice to get the Avengers 1 version of the Hulk in that set though, because this is really something a lot of people were wanting to get, especially with the Hulk that can rotate his head something they introduced for Thanos, but we haven't really seen it that much in other big figs, so I'm really happy that they did decide to finally make that a possibility, and also include the Hulk in a smaller set. Otherwise, Cap and Black Widow are the same exact variants as we have seen previously in the Avengers Quinjet set, as well as some of the other Marvel superhero sets, but it is always good, as usual, to see Black Widow with fully detailed arm printing. That is really nice to see, and something I hope they continue to do for future versions of the character. Cap, on the other hand, is pretty nicely detailed, nothing super special going on with the character, and still would be cool to get dual molded boots for the character, but torso-wise, I think it's pretty decent, and I like the usage of the helmet they introduced, which is just overall a pretty good piece to use for Captain America. Loki has actually been upgraded from the last time we've seen him, both in Avengers Tower as well as the original Quinjet set, because this time he is sporting the brand new rubberized cape piece. This is a really interesting and honestly controversial piece because some people really like it, myself included, because I do feel like it is closer to the look of the capes in the movies where they have a bit of a slimmer profile and it kind of acts as one individual piece that is bendable but also flows down exactly the way you want it to on display. But others, also myself included, really love the fabric capes and hope this doesn't mean that they are going to be replaced by these single-piece rubberized capes. I think there is a time and place for them, and honestly, for superheroes, I think that this cape actually works a lot better because it does look a lot like it does in the movies, but for original LEGO themes, I would still love for them to use the fabric capes. Loki has a different expression where you can see he is beat up and has the mouth guard on him, so he can't even talk as he is being transported to the Asgard prison, and otherwise is to date the best version of the character we've gotten in gunmetal gray with a recolored LEGO Minecraft head as the Cosmic Cube. Lastly, the Chitauri is the Chitauri. Honestly, nothing much to say about that one. It is identical to all the other Infinity Saga ones, so we can move on to the main build. This is another interesting LEGO Marvel set because it's a very similar build to the Leviathan in the Avengers Tower. So similar that I initially thought the builds were pretty much identical. And while they're not identical, it is pretty close. They are very close in the way that they're built. It has full-on range of articulation, so you have mixel joints that kind of wrap all the way around so you can bend it back and forth, have it kind of slithering through the air. You have the underside of the detail, which is fully outlined with the kind of golden claw elements being used for the rib cage of the model, which I think is a really nice touch. If you look on the underside, it really does feel like it has this alien aesthetic, which is super cool. And the head, of course, has the jaw in which you can open and close, mounted on a Technic piece here, and you can move the head back and forth and up and down thanks to the mini ball joint connection point. Unfortunately, the head often cannot hold up its own weight, so if you just have it straight up, it is going to droop down the moment you start trying to fly this around. I do wish that they were able to mitigate that problem, maybe by having it be mounted on a bigger ball joint, but the good thing is that, well, they have you place it so low to the ground that the head is often just resting on the ground anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Otherwise, you can angle each of the individual fins here on mixel joints as well, rotate the tail, you have some transparent purple energy on the inside of the creature, and you even have some stud shooters so it can attack the heroes. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent representation of the Leviathan. I know that we're probably never going to get a full-on, supersized minifigure scale version of this iconic creature, and while that is unfortunate, it is very understandable because that would be a gigantic set, and honestly, having a Leviathan set be any bigger than this is probably not that marketable, so I can see why they went with this sort of in-between scale that they did, and it's nice to have the Chitauri on the back here as kind of a playable aspect where you can place a character on the back, but there are a couple of things I wish were done better. For instance, the transparent clear stands here are really short, and I just really wish they were a little bit taller so it actually feels like this thing is flying. As it is right now, it feels like they literally only included them so these spike pieces would not just be resting on the ground and break off, which it's nice that they included a stand, but couldn't they have included just a few more transparent clear pieces? I feel like that would have done a lot of wonders in terms of making this feel like much more of a threat, like it's flying above the ground and elevated upwards, because here it's just barely laying on the ground itself. Again, this is $50 US for only 347 pieces, which by all accounts is not that great of a deal, and even if you count the Hulk as like worth $10 by himself, I'm not super convinced this is worth up to 50, like maybe 40 on a good day, but 50 is a little high. So it is what it is. However, the minifigs included are great. It did include more minifigures than I expected for a set like this, making it a little bit hard to judge value-wise. If you want the figures, and if you really want to get the turnable head version of the Hulk, as well as some of the main heroes and villains from the first Avengers movie, this is probably the cheapest way that you can get those characters. But if you're only focused on the build, well, this isn't a $50 build. It's a $35 build tops with a lot of fun characters to go with it. So it really depends on what you value more in a LEGO set. Overall, I think it's nice we're continuing to get sets based off of that early phase of Marvel, but I also do wish that maybe they could have knocked off a couple of minifigures here and brought the price down, because having this be a lot cheaper would have made it a lot better. That's all I have to say for this set, and hope you enjoyed the review. This is 76297 Dancing Groot, and you know why it's called that? Well, that's why this is actually a fully functioning dancing baby Groot from the end credits scene. Sorry about that, that's kind of crazy how a part just fell off. From the end credits scene of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. It retails for $45 or 45 euros and comes with 459 pieces, which is pretty much the price per part ratio you would want a set like this to have. However, it does have a lot of small pieces, so it definitely does end up feeling a bit smaller than your average $45 set. Now, Dancing Baby Groot does actually have a few different posability and display options. Removing a panel on the side of the pot here reveals a couple of different things. First off, you have extra flowers that you can use to stick onto him at different points to basically just add more foliage, presumably as he grows up. And you also have two additional stickers to be used: Guardians of the Galaxy, spelled out in the Guardians of the Galaxy actual in-universe font, as well as the movie title, Guardians of the Galaxy in English. Plus, you can choose to use the I Am Groot style font, which is the same font as the I Am Groot mini episodes on Disney+. I chose to use the I Am Groot because it's the only one that literally says Groot on it, and overall, I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of like car license plates that it actually does have that option to do that. I don't know why this piece keeps falling off. That's kind of whack how the sheer function of moving this is causing a piece to fall off. That's so weird. Anyways, moving on to the actual build itself. I think I see how that's falling off now. And maybe I'll do it a little bit slower so it doesn't do that. The build is actually quite clever. For most of the build, I didn't even realize how exactly this was going to function, and it's actually a deceptively simple mechanism. You just have two different lift arms going back and forth that basically cause the body to sway like so. As the body sways, you have a series of Technic linkages on the back here, which allow it to basically have this swaying side-to-side motion, and the arms are simply mounted on frictionless Technic pins, which just balance on these little miniature Mixel ball joints here, which allow it to kind of move the arms up and down as he sways. The head is not connected to really any of these pieces, and is basically just its own swivel joint. Not even on a Mixel joint, it's just on a swivel joint here, which typically I would maybe say it would have been nice to have a little bit more head articulation, but actually the movement of side to side is not bad, and I feel like it totally is good for a build like this. Of course, you can move the arms on the Mixel joints as well as the individual fingers, so you can really have them splayed out in kind of a dancing motion. I like how the thumbs are these little vines, kind of making it feel like he's really just one with nature, and you do have the option to either add or remove these different add-ons, one of which are headphones that you can place on him. The headphones build is a super simple build. It's basically just like a Star-Lord headphone right there, and then of course you do have these sunglasses as well, which you can choose to remove, but honestly, he does end up feeling a little naked without that, and well, that's why you have the extra foliage pieces which you can put on his forehead to cover that up. However, I do like displaying him with all the accessories. I think it is pretty cute that he has these two little pairs of sunglasses on the top of his head, and the headphones are also just a very cute addition to this build, so I actually do quite like leaving them on, even though technically in the movies he doesn't really have that featured in. The only other rotation on this particular element is allowing it to rotate back and forth as you slide this back and forth, but again, that also is just thanks to these lift arms going back and forth themselves, and really, it's just kind of its own thing. It's not even hooked up to any sort of gear on the bottom. It's such a clever mechanism to make it work. So, how do I feel about the set for $45? Well, for one, I really wish this piece just was adhered a little bit tighter on. I don't know why it keeps falling off. Maybe that's just a problem for me, but I feel like that could have gone through a few more rounds in iteration and testing to make it such that the model is not actively trying to pop this piece off when you move it, but otherwise the mechanism of the build is very clever. I really like the way it's done, and I feel like sometimes when LEGO does these larger brick-built characters, they do tend to be a little in the uncanny valley sort of thing, where you're like, okay, well maybe the eyes or the head doesn't look quite right, but here it actually does. It really does look like Groot. I'm very happy with how it looks, and I think the usage of the upside down kind of car grill or the car hood element here is a really nice touch for the mouth. It's just done really nicely and really doesn't make it feel like he's a very smiley and cheery type of creature. There's a nice little lever on the back which you can twist to move back and forth, and overall I feel like this is a really fun build. In terms of being worth $45 though, I don't know. It is a pretty small thing, and it definitely does feel more akin to some of these smaller botanical sets which are coming out, which are again $30 and not $45, but this one does have a Technic function with the motion, so that does add a lot to it. It also is a licensed character, but $45 is a lot to pay for what you eventually get. I think if you like the thing that it looks like, you like the build, you like the functionality, it could be worth it, but I also feel like a lot of those pieces are very small. A lot of them are small, tiny mechanisms, or little flowers, or little vines, that altogether makes me feel like at best this really should have been closer to $40, but that's all I have to say about this one, and pretty much we can move on to the next set. This is 76295, the Avengers Helicarrier. It retails for $80 or 80 euros and comes with, unfortunately, only 509 pieces, putting it at a 15.7 price per part ratio. This is a really interesting oddity in the LEGO Marvel Superheroes lineup because this is more akin to a mini-scale LEGO Star Wars set than it is a Marvel set. In fact, it uses many of the same exact design principles. The base is built in an incredibly similar manner, it also has a little bit of a plaque showcasing what it is, and it's in this sort of mini-scale that's a micro-scale type of build that isn't really compatible with minifigures. All in all, this is one of the most interesting Marvel sets we've gotten in a long time because it just kind of exists in its own scale. Now, that's not saying that I do not like the set. I actually find it really interesting, and I love the fact that we actually are getting a full-on mini-scale helicarrier, which is super cool because the last one that we got was obviously a minifigure playscale one back in 2020, and we also got the much larger MCU-styled one as a very, very large set, but this is a really good in-between. It allows folks to have a helicarrier and play around with it without having to shell out the big bucks for something really big. Detail-wise, this is really meant to represent the MCU version of the helicarrier, and because of that you have a lot of really interesting details, from this kind of blue light hanger stripe on the underneath. You have the engines on the back, which are these iconic kind of almost trapezoidal shaped pieces on the back here, which I think are done really nicely, and then you have the entire rotated aircraft carrier type of landing strip here, which is really cool. You've got some smaller jets, you have what I guess is supposed to be a larger Quinjet style of build, and then you have the command module up here. The way the individual rotors are done are pretty much just mounted on individual little Technic pins, and while you can't really spin them up without just breaking them off, it is really just for show anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Sticker-wise and decal-wise, there are only a couple of different 64 numbers on the bottom here, but what is unfortunate is that this is a very, very sticker-heavy set. You see, because pretty much all of the individual landing strip lines and printings are unique, they opted to do stickers for literally every single decal that you see. That means a sticker here, a sticker here, sticker here, 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 and here, and I'm probably missing a few here and there. So that's a lot of stickers, and it honestly was a little overwhelming at first to have so many stickers to put on for a set like this. However, I can't deny that the end result is really nice. You have some really clean decal work being done for these stickers here. I really like how you have each individual colored lines where it really showcases the way it actually is supposed to look in universe, and I really love all the little micro scale detail elements they managed to pack in, from little roller skates for details on the side here, to ice skates on the side for some of the kind of side fins, to the ski poles being used for the top antenna. You even have some little bits and pieces of like a forklift here for a smaller vehicle, and altogether, it's built up really nicely. They even have a recolor of the brand new windscreen element introduced in LEGO City earlier this year and later used throughout LEGO Dreams in light gray, which is a really nice touch. Altogether, the build is quite nice. For a mini-scale helicarrier, this is a pretty decent representation, and there's not a lot that I would have personally changed about the model, other than maybe the inclusion of prints instead of stickers. What is printed though is this really nice plain printed 4x4 tile that says LEGO Marvel Helicarrier. It's a really nice touch, and I actually do appreciate that they did manage to print this. It could have been very easy to make it a sticker, but it feels just a little bit more premium to actually have it as a print. Now that being said, we do have to talk about the price. This is just a little over 500 pieces, and for whatever reason, it is $80 US. It seems that LEGO is going by a completely different metric for pricing these adult-oriented display sets than they are for many of the other minifigure scale sets in the lineup, because the LEGO Star Wars mini-scale ships suffer from a same fate. They're pretty egregiously expensive for the number of pieces that you get. Now, I probably would go to assume that that's because they were guessing that the adults who are going to be buying this as a display model are more willing to shell out a little bit more for, honestly, a little less than what you would get for a standard kid's play toy, and maybe the market supports those numbers. I will say though, it is a little disappointing because this is way too expensive. I think it's kind of crazy at $80. It does not feel like an $80 set. I think at best it's $60, and that's being pretty generous, you know? 50 is closer to what it should be. 55 tops, like 60 is already asking a lot, but 80 just does not make sense to me for a model like this. That's really all I have to say about it. It is unfortunate to end this on a bit of a lower note, but I really can't recommend this for the retail price. It feels too overpriced for what it is. Many of the pieces are even small, so if you look at the 500 some piece count, it's not like it's using some gigantic, large, or even special printed pieces. All the decals are stickers, and the rest of it is just little small tiny bits and pieces of detail. So don't really know what's going on with the price of the set. I do love the build though. It's a great build. It looks really nicely detailed. It's gonna look fantastic hanging from my ceiling, but that price, no thank you. This is 76291, the Avengers Assemble Age of Ultron. It comes with 613 pieces and retails for $100 US or 100 euros at a 16.3 cent price per part ratio. Now, admittedly, I have been a little hard on some of the sets on this list for being pretty overpriced for what they are. However, counterpoint, this set is awesome. I love this set so much, and yes, if you look at the piece count, maybe it's not necessarily worth $100, but as a display piece, as a piece that includes all of the original Avengers that appeared in Age of Ultron, this set is so good. You see, this is basically recreating that iconic still shot in Avengers Age of Ultron, which showcases all of the Avengers leaping into action. You got Black Widow and Hawkeye up at the front here, you have Iron Man flying through the entire group, Cap on his motorcycle, Thor leaping in with his hammer, and then the Hulk crashing in from the back. The thing I love about the scene is that it is so dynamic. Every single minifigure is posed perfectly to where they were in the movie, and I feel like it really recreates an iconic scene. Whereas many of the other diorama sets are kind of LEGO creating their own sort of scene or type of setting based on scenes that happened in the movie, this is a very one-to-one depiction of that Age of Ultron assemble scene, which showcased the truck kind of braking, swerving to the side, and crashing into these barriers here, and as it tips over, Black Widow and Hawkeye jump out from the force of the truck, tipping to the side. You have Iron Man flying through almost just diagonally, right through the center there, Cap leaping forwards on his motorcycle. This is such a dynamic scene, and I really love just how dynamic they were able to make this out of just LEGO pieces. This is not just a display set, but it is a playset of sorts. You can choose to take all the minifigures out and pose them individually. You can take the truck out and have it drive around. You even have a Hulk smash feature where you can take the Hulk and, well, have him smash the bunker here. And there's all sorts of different action and play features that you can do with this build. But at its core, this is a display set. And this is one of the only sets that I'm very tempted to kind of leave as is, and maybe even buy extra copies of the minifigures online to put on my minifigure wall to display them in two different places, because this is just so good as a display piece. I love how they were able to pull this off. Now, The set does also include 3 of the Hydra agents in Chitauri armor, which I don't even necessarily think they needed to include 3, but it is nice to get 3. I certainly am not complaining. One of them is even outfitted with a nice little jetpack on the back here, making him technically unique for the set. And what's really cool is all the different modules all just connect via Technic pins. So the entire scene feels pretty modular in the sense that you can kind of rotate around different ways that you want it to be displayed. And initially, I was kind of thinking that, oh, maybe that means that you can actually take other sets and combine them into stuff like this. Unfortunately, that's not really the case. You can really only play around with the modules included in this set, but it's not that big of a deal. I think that it is still nice that you have this modularity to the way it is built. I do, however, just wish that maybe you could have connected like that small battle pack to this set as well to have a more complete scene. Otherwise, once everything is fully connected, it is a really dynamic ranged scene. You even have this tree that's like in the process of toppling over from the force of the explosion. You've got all sorts of different building techniques for the trees, with the upside down small and large fern elements being used here to add some dynamicism to the scenery. You even have a tree tipping over on the side here that's just been crashed through by the vehicles, and altogether, it's a really fun build. It's not the most stable in some ways, like these just easily fall off. They're just really only connected by like one single stud, so it is probably one of the most fragile LEGO sets that has come out in the modern age, but that's kind of intentional because the entire thing is just meant to be displayed by adults. And it's a really interesting set because obviously kids are going to love it because it includes the entire Avengers lineup from Age of Ultron, but it also is a really good display for adults to enjoy and put up as a display piece. Now, minifigure-wise, most of these figures are honestly the same as what we've gotten in the past. Black Widow is a new version based on the Age of Ultron outfit that she had, so we can take a look at that minifigure right here. I love the detail on this one. Obviously, the original Age of Ultron Black Widow that we got was based off of concept art, which had these glowing blue lines throughout the suit, which they kind of toned down for the final movie, so I'm glad to finally get a movie-accurate version of Black Widow, and the same actually goes for Hawkeye over here. Hawkeye has his Age of Ultron outfit with the dark red detailing on the jumpsuit there, featuring the new style of bow, the new hairpiece that he got from the collectible minifigure series, and altogether, pretty well-produced minifigure, and definitely the most accurate version of the character that we've gotten for this particular lineup of Marvel. Iron Man is the same one as in the battle pack for the smaller set in the wave, but it is a great minifigure. Good to see the updated helmet. I still will miss the older helmet. It's going to take honestly a while for me to get used to this one, but it's not too bad. You know, I think it definitely serves its purpose and does definitely feel like it scales a little bit better for the Iron Man proportions. And then Hulk over here is really great because Hulk actually has a lot of awesome detail printed on the shorts there. He has printing for the Age of Ultron design that he had for the shorts. You also can rotate the head back and forth because thankfully the head and hair are all removable this time, which is a nice little new update that they've done to the Hulk style of big figs, and it is very cool because it does allow him to pose up a lot more nicely in this set, which literally would have been impossible to pose him up in dynamic as a pose until they actually have the head turning implemented in, so that is super cool. Thor over here is sporting the brand new special of rubberized cape here. This is a cape that I have mixed feelings on because I think it looks the best for the movie characters, but also arguably I do miss the cloth pieces, but for Marvel and for Avengers, I think it does work quite well. The torso is, I believe, one that we have seen before, basically just for the standard Avengers look, but honestly, his look changed so infrequently. Like, he would have minor updates from one movie to another that I feel like this torso does the job just okay for Age of Ultron, but those who might want something a little bit more accurate might be still hoping for something a little different than this. And then Cap, on the other hand, is sporting a brand new Age of Ultron outfit here. You can see the detailing on the torso. It's very close to other versions we've gotten, but this one is specifically for Age of Ultron, also because you can also clip the shield on the back, which admittedly is a little unwieldy. I can't really think of a better way to mount it on, but now it feels like it is so far from the back that honestly I don't even know if it was worth them doing it, but it is still good. Only thing that I think could make this figure better is if they dual molded the legs, which is absolutely something I still hope that they will get at some point. Otherwise, that's pretty much all the individual Avenger minifigures in the set. The Chitauri Hydra agents here are pretty nice. They have like metallic gold color schemes with the transparent purple blasters, as well as the trans-purple style of coloration on the visors. Nothing super crazy, but I think they're the most accurate versions of these troopers that we've gotten so far. And overall, this is a really cool and dynamic diorama display set. It might actually be my favorite one. And yes, the No Way Home set exists, and it's very cool, but it also is just part of a scene. You know, the No Way Home set is just the Spider-Man Statue of Liberty head, which I think is great, but here you get the full scene. You get the terrain, you get the vehicle, you get the tower, and I feel like it is because of the way it looked in the movie. You're allowed to do a lot more with $100, so overall, I'm happy with it. Yes, for $100, this is arguably just physically, given what you have, not necessarily worth the price, but as a really cool diorama display of Avengers, as something that recreates an iconic freeze-frame shot from the movies, I think this is a pretty worthy addition to the Diorama Infinity Saga collection. This is the flagship set of the wave. Set number 76286, the Milano spaceship, retails for $180 and comes with 2,090 pieces, putting it at a pretty good 8.6 price per part ratio. It includes multiple minifigures of the entire Guardians of the Galaxy crew and is to date the most detailed version of the Milano spaceship yet. There's a lot that you can do with this model, but I'm actually going to start off by taking a look at the minifigures, and in doing so, I can actually showcase some of the ways that you can store the minifigure tools and weapons to make this an even more engaging set. First off, the entire front of the cockpit does open up like so you can open up the windscreen, but it does even better. The entire thing just pops off super smoothly, and it's kind of its own separate piece. Thankfully, it is attached by a couple of studs, so it's not just going to fall off, but you do have that option, which is really nice. On the inside, you can see just how much room there is inside the spaceship to be able to pose your figures, something that was really impressive to me. You can pose 3 minifigures facing front to the cockpit, and you even have space for a couple more on the sides here, like Drax in the back, and a little spot for the baby potted Groot. It's really cool seeing just how much space there is to play around. There's even a bed on the back where, of course, you can lay down different characters or have them be seated on a bench, and just all sorts of different things you can do with the model. Removing the minifigures from the ship, there are places where you can store each and every one of the character's weapons. Drax, for instance, has his knives mounted on the side of the wall here, so you can remove them from the side of the wall and place them in his hands. Baby Groot can be removed from his seat, and he does have the pot that comes with him, so you can just pop him out right there. Rocket Raccoon has his gun right on the other stud here, so you can place that in his hand. Star-Lord has the 2 blasters, which are mounted on the top of the ship. Gamora arguably has the most clever way of storing her weapon element, which is, as you can see, a little grill sticking out of the side of the build of the structure here, which you basically take the ninja sword and just slide it right through the grill. It's super clever and it works really well, and it's a very unobtrusive way of mounting the sword without having to even clip it on. With the minifigs removed, let's take a closer look at the crew of the Milano, starting off with Star-Lord. All the characters are featuring their Ravager outfits in dark red, an outfit combination we haven't really seen since the first 2014 Guardians of the Galaxy movie, so this is super cool to get updated movie-accurate versions of the characters in these outfits, especially because when they were first released, they kinda were just based off of concept artwork, and some of the outfits were not 100% accurate. Star-Lord has a blue undershirt and a really nicely detailed red leather jacket. You can see the printing on the back there, and it's overall a really nicely done minifigure. He is just utilizing the standard head that we have for all of Chris Pratt's appearances in LEGO forms, from Owen in Jurassic World to all of the modern Star-Lord iterations, and while I feel like maybe it wasn't the most accurate one to use for the 2014 version of Star-Lord, I think it's alright for a Peter Quill head, and it definitely does capture the actor likeness. Gamora, on the other hand, is really nicely done here. She has a nice dark red suit, and again, she is just using the same exact pants as Peter Quill, so they were able to save a little bit on that. Drax also uses the same pants, so they didn't have to make that many new elements for these particular figures, but I think this is an instance where it does really work. The uniforms are specifically tailored to each figure. You have the green skin showing on the front here, and you do have an alternate expression of an angry face on the back here, which is just a nice one to get for her character. You also have the printed magenta highlights in the hair, which are a really nice way to tie it together, and overall, pretty solid figure. Next up, we have Drax the Destroyer, and usually the Drax minifigures we get are angry or scowling, which is why I'm really happy that this one is actually smiling or laughing, because I feel like that is a more accurate facial expression as we've seen him in the other movies. This is one of the first times we've gotten the shirtless version of Drax in a very long time. It's been literally years since we got this iteration of Drax, and it is super cool to see the tattoos on the arms featuring these skulls of minifigure heads, which is just a very funny detail. The printing on both arms here, which is really nicely done, and just exquisitely printed tattoos on the front and back of the torso. Drax is easily my favorite minifigure in the set, and they really went all out with his design. It's just so cool to get a movie-accurate one, and I'm very glad they went with the gray instead of the green. I don't know why they were doing him in green for a while for the most recent Guardians movie and the Advent calendar. I guess in some lighting he does look green-ish, and obviously in the comics he's green and not gray, but in the movies he's much more gray than green, so I'm glad they actually went back to that for this particular figure. Lastly, for standard minifigures, we have Rocket Raccoon. This is pretty much the same one that we got in the earlier Ravager Rocket Raccoon set where we had his own Warbird, but it is good to get him in that Ravager outfit here, and he does have a specialized brick-built gun as well. You can rotate the head back and forth with the new Rocket Raccoon head mold, and I think this is a really good representation of the character. And finally, they actually brought back the baby Groot mold for the Groot in the pot here, which is really interesting. We haven't really seen this mold for a very long time. It's actually been years since we've seen this mold. I honestly thought it was long gone by now, but we still have it here, so it's awesome to see baby Groot back in Lego form as a tiny little character sitting in the pot, which is pretty much the perfect way to depict a character like this. Overall, minifigure-wise, I am very, very glad they included basically every single member of the full team. While it would have been good to get a brick-built version of Groot to actually kind of harken back to his large-scale adult form from the first Guardians movie, something we haven't really seen since 2014, I think this was a fine compromise to include the end-of-the-movie Baby Groot version, especially because, well, the bigger version probably wouldn't have fit in the ship, and that way, now they can actually fit every single character in the build like this. But speaking of the build, this has got to be one of the best Marvel superheroes builds yet. I am absolutely blown away by the amount of detail when it comes to the way the paneling is done on the front of the ship, on the side. It is truly a feat of engineering to pull this off. You can see even on the underside of the ship, you have different angled amounts of detail, you have different pieces angled here and there, this piece bending down, this piece bending upwards. There is just so much detail factored into the angled shapes of the vehicle, and it is definitely one of the best versions that they've ever done to date of any Guardian ship. The thing that really impressed me is the top stripe being done in orange here. It is so clean, but it's actually stretching across multiple different angles of plates. This one is angled slightly upwards, and it just basically forms this very perfect interlocked sort of angle with the way the orange stripe is done. You have a really nice curvature downwards here, and you have this back fin just being angled upwards, just really accurate detailing to capture a very difficult shape in Lego with the bricks they have available. Of course, you do have the option of all of the engines on the back here, and it is very, very cool to see even the back glass viewing port on the back of the ship there. You can see all the way to the front of the ship, showcasing that this is a ship that does have a full interior. And you have all of these different engines that can be angled on mixel joints on the back here, or mini ball joints, as well as all of these different winglets which can be angled, these ones on the clicking ratchet joints, so you can kind of bend this down or fold it up maybe for kind of smoother travel, so that is very, very nice. You can even move these up and down on mixel joints, angle these wings back and forth, also on dual mixel joints, so a lot of stuff that you can do to really make this feel alive as a ship and make it feel like it has all these dynamic angles to it. And of course, it does have a spot where you can place the stand on the underside of the model, so you can stick the stand right in the hole there, and there you go, the ship is ready to fly. I love the way they did this ship, and that's not all, because of course, it does have a full interior as well. So let's go ahead and lift up this cockpit section and take a closer look behind that cockpit. On the inside here, there are a couple sets of controls where you can see that you have different levers that can be pushed and pulled, almost like Star Wars hyperspace levers there. You've got a sticker on one side and some control panels on the other side, and I especially like this screen here where Yondu is FaceTiming the crew. You have a sticker showcasing one of the paintings on the back there. And then, as you move onwards to the inside of the crew compartments, you can see there's just so much usable space here. Of course, you do have a special print for Star-Lord's quintessential Awesome Mix playlist there. Just kind of trying to get a better camera angle. You can kind of see it on the inside of the ship there. Very cool to see that as an exclusive print tied to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and definitely something that you really do need for a Milano focus set. And overall, I'm just really happy that you have places where you can put the minifigures. I can stand up Drax in the middle of the ship, and it feels like this is a hallway that he's walking down. There's enough space for all the characters to walk around, and their heads don't even have to, they don't have to bend down, you don't have to have them seated. There's just so much interior space here that is really, really nice to see. There is even, as I said in the beginning, a bed for the characters. So if you want to let them lay down and go to sleep, you can choose to do that and have them be resting on the bed inside of the ship. The amount of detail is simply unparalleled, and storage space for minifigures is phenomenal. Altogether, for $180 and over 2,000 pieces, I genuinely am finding it hard to come up with any complaints about the set at all. I mean, I guess there might be a couple of things when it comes to stability because of all these crazy angles. Sometimes things tend to wobble back and forth. Other times, if you put your hand on the wrong part of this particular panel, it can kind of snap off, but it's super easy to put back together. And overall, it's just truly a remarkable feat of engineering. I have to absolutely commend the set designers who came up with the build like this. It is by far my favorite version of any Guardian ship we've ever gotten, and I hope that one day we'll get a ship like this for even the Bowie or something newer from Guardians Volume 3, because I personally would love to see a ship like that rendered in as much detail and love as this. That's all for this review, but I hope you enjoyed our look at the brand new Milano. It's a great price, a great build, and great minifigures. What's not to like? I love this set. And that sums up our look at every single one of the brand new August 2024 LEGO Marvel sets. For me personally, this is one of the strongest waves of LEGO Marvel ever. It's really cool to actually get coverage of all sorts of different movies in the Infinity Saga, and I always love it when LEGO goes back and revisits old movies and gives us things that we haven't really gotten before, or upgraded versions of things that are desperately in need of an upgrade. So all in all, this is a really cool wave. I think my favorite of the lineup is obviously the Milano. We have not really ever gotten an original Guardians Milano of this level of detail before, and I feel like out of all the ships the Guardians have had, it's arguably the most iconic one, so I think it's really cool that we actually get it finally as a large-scale set, giving it the justice it deserves, especially with that new cockpit piece and the minifigures. But I think another big standout to me is actually the diorama set for Age of Ultron. Honestly, the dioramas were a little bit hit or miss. I think the Endgame one was just okay because it didn't really depict an exact scene, but this one is super strong, showcasing the Avengers assemble scene, literally including every single member of the team, as well as 3 different Hydra soldiers. It's actually a pretty good value, as well as just a phenomenal display piece, and I cannot wait for them to cover that iconic Avengers 1 circle scene, which I'm sure is coming at some point, given how successful this is. Honestly, the only weaker set to me is probably the smaller battle pack. I really do feel like it really should have been just like that original Age of Ultron battle pack, where we get 2 Iron Legion soldiers and maybe 2 Ultron drones. I think that would have been just so much better because we're already getting Hydra troopers in the Avengers Age of Ultron set, and I think it's really weird that we're getting Ultron focused sets, but no Ultron or Ultron drones is kind of bizarre. It would have been such a good battle pack if they just did 2 of those and 2 of the drones, but unfortunately they had to theme it around the beginning of the movie, which I think would have made sense if they actually managed to incorporate the build as a connectivity piece to the diorama. But as it is, it's kind of its own separate standalone thing. It has another copy of the Iron Man figure that we already got in the Age of Ultron diorama, and because of that, I'm just not the biggest fan of it. I still really like the fact that we're getting Iron Legion soldiers in updated modern types of designs, but it could have been so much more. The Surtur set is okay. I think that when initial images first dropped, I was very against the usage of the crow head from Eternals as Surtur's head, and I felt the brick-built crown was kind of whack, but after seeing the play feature, how you can literally have Thor carry it, as well as the fact that obviously they were dealing with limited molds and they didn't really have the budget to make a new mold, I think it's fine. It is fully posable and playable, which is really all you need out of a buildable figure like that. And the Leviathan is probably the least interesting one to me because we did just get a Leviathan just like it in the Avengers Tower set. But for folks who didn't get the Avengers Tower set, this is a really good alternative, and I love how many minifigs it includes. If only they swapped out one of those figures for Thor instead, because I really feel like one of those iconic Avengers 1 scenes was, again, when Thor was actually using his hammer to strike the plates of the Leviathan, but that would also mean we get Thor in 3 sets, so I do like how they did split it up a little bit. And finally, the Dancing Groot and Helicarrier set are kind of the two non-minifigure scale ones, and those are always a little bit hit or miss for me. I think the Dancing Groot is a fun set and a good mechanism, but definitely not the one that was most exciting for me personally because I do love minifigure focused stuff, but the Helicarrier is actually really nice. I hope that LEGO will continue to do more mini-scale stuff like the Helicarrier, giving us items in that vein, just like we're getting for Star Wars earlier this year, and I'm curious what other items they could do. I could totally see them doing a Milano in that scale, or some of the other Guardians ships, and even some other ships from across different eras of the Marvel Universe, so I'm all for it, and the price isn't too bad either. Overall, that sums up my look at this latest Marvel 2024 wave. Let me know in the comments which ones are your favorites and least favorites, and how you'd rank these sets, and are you getting any of them on day 1 on August 1st?